Every individual is a subset of a core melody. You could have hundreds of people, they're all from the same core melody. They each play that melody slightly different. And no two individuals ever have the same song of truth. The individuals start working de facto in response, in a world of responsive. They're not working from within, they're responding survivalist from without. And because of that, their heart is flowing. They're not in command of the nature of the melody that's flowing out from their heart. The truth is the same, but how that truth is played. It modulates in accordance to events and happenings that are in one circle. And that individual is not sovereign, and the individual is not free. They are responding to external stimuli, and external stimuli are predicating how they are playing their song of truth. But in nature, embedded in nature, by hook or by crook, one way or the other, the individual will evolve to closer and closer and closer embrace of their essential melody of truth within in grace. And if it's through a series of difficulties and obstacles, those difficulties and obstacles will humble the individual to recognize that they were working on a paradigm that is now obsolete. And that what worked before is no longer apropos. And if it was good, if it was Windows, now it's Windows 2.0. And the individual is prepared to accept a new paradigm. And in that new paradigm, a new construct can take root, and new possibilities can take root. And part of that evolution is the individual drawing closer and closer and closer to the core melody from which they've come. As individuals can play the same melody, they can play it dramatically, they can play it in darker notes, they can play it dramatically with ups and downs, it can be very symphonic, it could be a big haze. But the simple melody on which everything is built, that is analogous to the individual's higher self. The core soul frequency of the individual. The space where the individual and the creator are one. It is a space where it's equivalent to a watercolor, where the strokes of color flow and ebb into each other without there being any clear defining borders. The mystics often impart that there is a short path, that the individual doesn't have to learn from impediments and difficulties and challenges, but the individual is constantly being coaxed to a greater level of intimacy, a greater level of feeling, a greater level of living. And to the degree that the individual is paralyzed in fear from taking that next step, then default mechanism of nature goes through and summons obstacles to help break down the individual's resolve, break down the paradigm, allow the individual the level of humility by which they can return to their essential self, and in that space have true communion. The goal of the spiritualist is to reclaim the level of emotional integrity that they had as a child. That the veils that stifle emotional feeling, that were placed by a world of indifference or dissonance or indifference of callousness, disappointment, all those have to slowly be removed, because the greatest power of the soul is its emotional integrity. The volume control for how you play your song of truth The volume relates to the level of emotion. And so, if you're feeling emotionally dissonant and sour, you're playing your music, your song of truth, in darker notes really loud. And if you're playing your music in grace, and you reach ecstatic heights, then you're playing that music loud. The louder the music, spiritually, the more dynamic the song has, the more it has effects to shift, to change, to attract the road ahead for oneself and for one in one's circle of influence, and gradually to worlds beyond. We reflect on the law of measure for measure. Many people have embraced this concept as the law of attraction. Become cognizant that you are an incarnation of the Creator's truth. What separates you from celestial levels and beyond, the high angels, is that your truth is flowing in a place of contrast and free will. And so when you arrive in your truth, without polarities, without drama, but you just are as the Creator just is, and you play that music from a space from which creation took root, a space of ecstatic grace, ecstatic beingness, then the power of your truth is more powerful than the truth of angels, because it's more authentic. Because it's more true. Because you had more options and more freedom and more contrasts. So when you choose to play the melody in its simplicity and grace, that music is contagious and the world begins to dance to its rhythm. That is the great I am that the mystics taught and imparted about. The law of measure for measure would predicate that to the degree that one emits out their music, in the vibration of that music, positive versus negative, attracts either a proactive, short-rooted path that I call the path of intimacy, because the progression of the soul is always evolving and growing to greater proximity with its true root. And if the soul is proactive and reconvenes that connection through a path of intimacy, and not the long path of learning how not to be, but choosing to just be, then the soul progresses in that alignment and trajectory much quicker and without the drama and without the difficulties. But if the soul gets complacent and is neglectful of its essential mandate to play its music in grace, then they trigger a default mechanism and they summon obstacles and challenges that help break a person down to their essential self so that they can embrace a higher vulnerability. Because vulnerability is at the crux of feeling. And vulnerability is the necessary ingredient for our mutual interconnectedness, for recognizing all the essential chords of creation that are vibrating in our surroundings. And vulnerability is a predicate for any convergence of true love. I often impart that love's victory is surrendering into surrendering arms of another. Individuals have been hit so hard and often through the long path that they're petrified of being vulnerable and feeling because the dissonance is so loud. But they're always acting in default, in reaction to outside things, what has happened. And they're not tapping in to their essential root of what they are within. And instead of acting in default and a repercussive tit-for-tat domino effect reactions in the dissonance of playing their song, if they embrace their essential chord and they stand within it proactively and they set the tone, and they break the paradigm, and there's no need for suffering, and there is no need for pain, and they can advance in intimacy. And they can take a path that should take them 12 years, they can take it in 2 months. And there is no reason why not. For all are deserving. For all are worthy. And it's merely an issue if an individual chooses to be sovereign or if an individual is petrified of their own sovereignty and their own power. And the greatest power is their own vulnerability. And to the degree that you recover your own vulnerability and you can truly feel is the degree that you can amplify your aptitude and spiritual currency.